Anyway, so when you guys look at these top 50, and we've had time to live with it in the past week, what thoughts come to mind, Jerry? What do you think?
First thing is, I'm just happy to say I haven't seen all of them, so I find that refreshing.
Mm-hmm.
I really do.
That's true.
I'm happy to see things like as mixed as like In the Mood for Love and Metropolis. I mean, there's some things that are always going to be on here. It's a good. I think it's a good mix. I mean, Elijah Tay's on here at number 50. Close Up, The Battle of Algiers. I mean, of all the Jacques Tati movies, Playtime is not the one that would come to mind to be on here. I was thinking.
I disagree completely on that, but
because I would think I would actually pick one of the others in that trilogy. I mean, it's good. I don't think it's as bad as a lot of people say, because it was a disaster, wasn't it, when it came out?
Yeah, I mean it.
I mean, a lot of these were disasters when they came out.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, even Vertigo #1 was a complete disaster, and so was The Searchers too. But I mean, Playtime also was a complete disaster, and it was a very expensive disaster for Jacques Tati.
I mean, he really
to the point
did he ever
where
recover?
he made one movie after that, maybe two.
Was Traffic after that, or?
Traffic was after that, but I don't think he made one after that.
Well, I have an opinion on why Playtime is on the list, and many of these on the list.
Okay.
I think, look at 1972, because Tony Macklin, we just did a show with him last night that we posted. He started voting in this poll in 1972 because he started a magazine called Film Heritage, where he interviewed a lot of people working in the industry like Hitchcock and Peckinpah, and it was one of the most popular film journals at the time, and so he was invited to participate. He's participated every decade since. In 72, there were only 16 critics in the U.S. who participated.
And how many critics overall? Do you know? I mean,
I'm about to tell
something
you.
like 60.
I'm about to tell you.
Okay.
And there were 81 total voters in that 1972. Now there's a total of 1,204, 846 of which are critics. So the field has majorly expanded. It's become more democratized. Even from last decade, it's gone up something like almost 500 critics. So with that, I think a lot of these movies are being seen by this younger generation because they've been remastered and re-released, and Playtime got a big-time Criterion re-release.
True.
So that's a big title for them.
Well, Criterion must be considered like a huge player in the whole like great movies of all time kind of thing, because it's like, when a Criterion release comes out, I think that it, like remember a few months ago, like Broadcast News came out in Criterion. I bet that a lot of people who love Criterion movies had never, ever considered taking a look at Broadcast News. But yet, I bet they looked at Broadcast News after it came out on Criterion. I guarantee you they did. And that's the kind of power that Criterion has now, because they've demonstrated a true love for movies, and
I think that the list really does speak well of the film restoration and the fact that it works.
Yes. Yeah, I think that's a great point.
So what do we think of? Well, how do you want to go through this list? How do you want to do it?
I think do you want to go through it film by film, or
I think it's good to take a look at it, at first film by film, and then just sort of like let it sort of trail off.
Well, I'll follow on a conversation that we had last night, so I can get you guys' opinion on it. And then we have some callers on the line. Maybe I'll take those callers. The absence of many of the classic comedies on this list. I mean, Chaplin's here with City Lights. The General is here for Buster Keaton. Those were much higher ranked in previous decades, and those have really fallen. City Lights at 50. The General, I think, at 34.
I think that has to do with just the general lack of, well, I don't want to say respect, but at least lack of eyes on a lot of silent movies. I just, I feel like, as we go further into the future, there's going to be, unfortunately, there's going to be less people who consider silent movies to be like great things. That said,
Pandora's box, why isn't that on here? Why isn't Greed on here?
But Greed I can understand, but because Greed's been cut down and cut down from like 7 hours to like 90 minutes, and people don't really know if they're seeing the real Greed or not. But that said, there's still 3 silent movies. In fact, that's a record. There's still 3 silent movies on the top 10 list. So that's pretty amazing, too. So,
well, and I made this point last night. You would think that, there's a lot of younger generations of critics being included in this process this decade. And as opposed to other decades, as was pointed out to me by Tony, in previous decades he got a note saying, the greatest films of all time, meaning the most accomplished, the most kind of groundbreaking, blah, blah, blah. This year was the first time the editor came with an email that said, just pick your favorite. For whatever reason, whatever is your favorite, that's what you include on your list. But you would think that younger generation of critics and their inclusion in this process would mean that we have more recent films.
Recent movies, yeah.
But the post-1980 films on the list 10 years ago equaled 9. Mm-hmm. This decade they equal 6. So actually we have more older movies.
Right.
Well, it might be because there's so. There are a lot of younger critics that have the whole idea of putting your personal favorite on the thing might be the reason that has changed, because people have different favorites. I mean, when you get to putting your favorites on, it gets much more complicated.
Oh yeah.
It gets into who you were when you were watching the movie, when you were that age, blah blah blah, on, and it gets much more complicated, and therefore it gets much more splintered out.
Uh-huh.
So.
What would be? Tell me this, and then I'll take a phone call. What are the glaring omissions that you would have expected to see on this particular list?
Oh, you mean like in the top 50 or the top 10?
Top 50. I mean, if it's represented on this list as it is, then I don't have a problem with it. But I mean, we can argue the merits of it should have been ranked higher, blah blah blah. But as long as it's included, as long as that title is represented, I feel good about it. But there are a couple that come to mind that aren't represented.
There are a couple that come to my mind. I mean, and correct me if I'm wrong, if I just don't, because I'm blind as a bat, maybe. Chinatown, Lawrence of Arabia. I mean,
Lawrence of Arabia for sure.
I mean, that to me is going. But I mean, I'm looking at what's included. But I would think those would be on there. But I don't. It's a different. I'm sure people probably pick those. I'm sure those were picked.
Well, none of those beloved kind of movies like Lawrence of Arabia or Casablanca or any of that stuff made it.
I know.
Casablanca.
Yeah.
I can understand Casablanca. I can understand. I can totally understand Casablanca not making the list. And I say that personally too, because that's personally a movie that I've always thought was overrated. Like it's an amazing movie in the sense that it was made basically without a screenplay, and they did it day by day. And that's amazing too, because the screenplay is so great because it has so many like great lines in it and stuff like that. But that movie really doesn't make any sense to me, really. So
it's funny. William Friedkin has been telling the story lately that the last scene at the airport, they employed midgets to stand in the background because so to make it look like they were standing farther away. That's just brilliant.
Yeah.
That's great stuff.
Yeah. Very, very cost effective.
Well, I mean, they were thinking on their feet when they did that movie. That's for sure. And I mean, it definitely paid off. But that's a movie that still its appeal outside of some of the great lines in it and some of the performances in it kind of totally eludes me. But so that doesn't surprise me. It's not on the list.
Also interesting, though, some of the films that have gained in stature since their release that we do regard as classics now, like The Wild Bunch or Once Upon a Time in the West, they're not on here at all.
Yeah.
No, in fact, there's no Western on the list except for The Searchers.
Yeah, I mean, I would expect almost to see Stagecoach on there too, but The Searchers is just one of the most influential films. I mean, the door shots alone are replicated so much.
It's weird though. The Searchers might have benefited from just being shown in so many film classes over the years.
That's true. Yeah,
but whereas there are better westerns. I mean, I think The Good and the Bad and the Ugly, The Wild Bunch, and Once Upon a Time in the West, as a matter of fact, are all better westerns, and maybe even Unforgiven too, are all better westerns than The Searchers. The Searchers seems to me to be a movie that's a movie for people who never really liked westerns. And that has to do with its whole story of, I think one of the reasons that people don't like westerns now is because there's a sort of inherent sense of racism in westerns, cowboys versus the Indians. Well, now a lot of people, of course, nowadays a lot of people have a lot more sympathy for the Indians than they did like in the 50s or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So the whole genre of the Western has been sort of besmirched by it. That said, these movies like Good and the Bad and the Ugly, The Wild Bunch, Once Upon a Time in the West, Unforgiven, all those movies, the Indians don't have any play in those movies. But still, there's been some kind of...
They're like written by me almost. They're very self-absorbed.
Well, I was shocked by, well, not really. I guess the exclusion that kind of shocked me was the red shoes. Like I expected that to be represented on the thing. But
that's a good point. That's a good.
That's a great point.
I even love Peeping Tom, but I really wish that a movie like M would have been represented, because
and that's not on the top 50. That's craziness.
No, Metropolis is the only Fritz Lang. Whenever I think about M, I think Citizen Kane. They talk about how groundbreaking that was, how it pushed the level of craft in movie making. I think that M did all of that 10 years earlier.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the craft of storytelling and camera in that film is just astounding to me.
Mm-hmm.
And the amazing thing about M too is that it actually asks you to give of yourself. Yeah. It asks you to give of yourself, to give some kind of sense of understanding to a person that in the first half of the movie is considered a villain, and in the second half of the movie is considered a victim.
And it's a child
killer. That's a very difficult thing.
Let me ask a dumb question. Is Children of Paradise or Beauty and the Beast on here?
No.
I'm surprised. I would think Children of Paradise would be on this list.
That's another movie that I think has gotten lost in the maelstrom of like learning about movies and stuff. That's a movie that I think a lot of people haven't, even a lot of like learned people have not seen yet.
Let me take a phone caller.
Yeah, sure.
937 area code. You're on the air.
Hey, this is Jeff from Washington, D.C. How are you?
Hey, Jeff. How are you, sir?
Hey, Jeff. What's up?
Hey, you guys are talking about, the sort of the top 50 films, and one of the things that always gets lost, and something that Roger Ebert said, who was the only person ever to win the Pulitzer for writing film, evaluations, was, what type of criteria do people use to be able to properly evaluate film? And something that, oftentimes we look at the subjective, but we really don't look at it objectively. And I think that in terms of whatever list that you're looking at, I hear inklings of it, like, what are some compelling scenes or, instances in the film, but you also have to sort of take into account the premise, what was the relevance of the film or the importance of the film at the time it was made. And I think that there needs to be some sort of formula for ranking these movies, and oftentimes I think they're more subjective than objective. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, I think that is a struggle, and I'm sure that every participant kind of had to define that for themselves. What is the delineation between what is the greatest, and, you know, in quotations, most important films ever made, and which ones are my favorites, and how often do those kind of cross lines? It's tough. It's tough to gauge. But if we did it by, you know, if we just named the markers in film, like these are the game changers, these are the ones that changed the shape of cinema, everyone would have the same movies on their list.
That's true. As a qualitative researcher, you have to qualify and justify, your findings, right? And so oftentimes when I see these lists, I don't see any qualifiers. It's more very subjective. And there are some, you called it markers that we could put to this that said, okay, here's this list, here are the markers that we use, here's our qualifiers and justifications, and then have people interpret them. But I think oftentimes when people are making these lists, they're not willing to do that. If you were to put The Godfather, for example, on there are many justifications as to why it meets certain markers, whereas, another film, let's say even Avatar you had mentioned before, might not quite, meet to those level of markers, so therefore it goes on, lower on the list. Although exceptionally technically relevant and out there, maybe the premise of the movie wasn't, as good as, or the originality of it wasn't there. So I think that it's how we look at it, but that's what I mean. When we talk about film, it's highly in the subjective, and we really need to start talking about subjectively.
Well, I have one thing to say about this. I think that there are certain senses. In a certain sense, you really have to look at how a movie, not only how entertaining a movie is, or how well put together it is, or how groundbreaking it is, even for the time in which it was released, but also you have to take into account what the movie is saying. What is the movie saying? What is it about? How does it define humanity? And that's a really huge issue. That's a huge point for me when I choose the movies that I particularly love and that are essential to me. Like what is it giving? What is it giving back to me? What positive thing can I take from this? Not that it has to be a message film, but it has to have some core of humanity. It has to fill me and inform me in some way. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that's the major thing that everybody who is every really thinking person that's filling out this ballot has to really grapple with. Now, there are some people that didn't. I mean, when you look at Tarantino's list, for instance, his list of the top 10 movies, they're all from the 70s. And there's one from the 90s, and it takes place in the 70s. So it's like that was all just his favorite stuff. He just put his favorite things down there. That's what it was.
Well, even like when he does a best of each year, his lists are very. I sometimes think he's just putting them down just to either to cause trouble or just be different. I don't. Put,
well, sometimes I think
I don't put that much stock in some of what he says a lot of the time in that regard.
Sometimes you think it's just about coolness with him, just about being cool. But I mean, the big question to me is, what does it say about humanity? Like, is that's the thing where you just, if you're going to take 10 movies to a desert island and you wanted to remember humanity and what humanity is, that's the movies that should be on the top 10.
Well, and there's also, I mean, this point comes up too. Jeff, did you say your name was Jeff?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Is how viable are these lists? And I think the benefit of lists like this, we can argue the merits of each selection all day long, but the benefit is it starts a conversation about films that matter. Classic film, the history of film, in a way in the popular vernacular that it isn't always there. I mean, we're always so focused on the latest blockbuster hit, the Avengers, Dark Knight. I think that's the value of lists like this.
Yeah, and I think these lists, are important to the degree that if you would release a list like this, opens up people's eyes to maybe who has never, person's never even heard of a lot of these films, and hey, they spend the rest of their life checking them out.
Yeah,
that's not a bad thing. There are worse ways to waste time. I mean,
that's the essential value of these lists, and I think that's what they're there for.
Yeah,
and I think that's why they're only done every 10 years.
Let's be very
thing,
honest. As much as we do enjoy going to the movies and everything, and I think in the last, since we've been doing this show, Jamie, the last 5 years, there are only a handful of films that between the let's say the five of us, including Dean and Aaron and Chris, there are a handful of films that maybe 20, 25 years might be on a list like this. Might.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking
movies.
of There Will Be Blood. Might be There Will Be Blood.
Might
be on there.
The Tree of Life.
The Tree of Life.
The Tree of Life.
Melancholia, for that matter, might be on this list in 30 years. But let's be very honest. A lot of the stuff that we do like and the stuff we don't like is not going to be anywhere near this list. It will be forgotten by the end of the year.
I love Cobra. It's never going to be on this list.
Yeah, it's never going to be. But you know what I'm saying. I mean, I think what's astounding, we could spend the rest of the show's life in the next 5 years talking about the movies that didn't make this list. But the ones that did make the list, it is impressive. Of the titles that are, some of the titles that are on there, I think, so that they've survived this long.
And you have to remember, too, that, okay, so we've got a list of 50. Even if it was a list of 300, even if it was a list of 1,000 movies, it still wouldn't be close to the number of movies that are worthwhile to watch if you're a movie lover in your life. I mean, seriously.
And Jeff, to kind of further expand upon your point, when you take the individual top 10 critics' picks, because they each submitted their own, 840 some odd critics submitted their own top 10s. When you take every different title from those lists, it equals something like over 2,400 movies.
That's a lot of movies.
That's how many different kind of opinions were represented.
The number one movie on the list, movie on the list, Vertigo. Sorry, but the number one movie on the list, Vertigo, got 191 votes.
Yeah, Jeff, what were you saying?
Well, and I think that we talk about the variance, right, of 2,400 movies being on that list. There you go. Is that it's extremely subjective. And they aren't using objective measures, and I think that's why we blast a lot of these lists. If you just put objective measures to this, we could whittle that thing down to, maybe even half that or a quarter of that. But I guess, not to get off topic, but it just dawned on me about, you were talking about good directors and movies and, and even just more recent films. But I was sorely disappointed with Christopher Nolan's The Dark Knight Rises lately. I don't know if that gets you too off topic, but what a terrific director. He should have some of his movies, too, like Memento, on lists like that. But I was sorely disappointed with that movie. So.
You're definitely not alone.
But you're not getting
that movie is suffering from a backlash. I think these days.
The backlash rises.
And also, who is the director of The Avengers now, going for the second, which is also a terrible film.
Joss Whedon.
Yeah, he's being renewed or something just because he made money for Disney. But frankly, they should have gotten a better director for that, the sequel. I mean, I guess this sort of ties in with my original thought, which is not just the critics rating these things, but also the viewers saying that these movies are good when in fact they're terrible. And in part of that's because they're not asking themselves simple questions or even critically thinking when they're watching the film.
Well, critical thought has eroded in the past decades.
Yeah,
and
if you say you don't like something, you get a death threat. So I mean,
exactly.
People are afraid to challenge, what's popular out there. Jeff, my friend, I appreciate it very much. You're awesome for calling in and giving us such an intelligent track of conversation, and thank you so much for listening to us.
Yes, thank you.
Will do. You need more people from Washington, D.C. calling in because this town
I
is
live here, so I'm why I live around here, so yeah.
Thank you, my friend.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff.
Bye-bye. Interesting point. We have a caller that's been on hold for 26 minutes, so I want to take his call, or her call, whatever it might be. Sorry, 770 area code. I think it's Marietta, Georgia.
I'm sorry, it's a guy, not a girl, guys.
That's okay. I mean, we're not going to hang up on you. I mean, don't worry about that.
And I have to have a precursor here. I do know that irrepressible, effervescent, and plush Dean tried it. I don't know if that's the plus or minus here.
It's Rich Gedney calling.
Well, the way that you described him, I seriously doubt you do know him. I'm kidding.
That's
total
funny,
joke.
man. That's funny. All right.
He's
your
a little
name?
plush these days, though. My name is Rich.
Hey, Rick. How are you doing?
Doing pretty good. I don't know if I can't follow Jeff. Jeff was so good. I cannot follow that, but I'll do my best. Listen, I really enjoy you guys. You don't get dialogue like this in movies ever on television, and it's just really nice to have this every week. I really do appreciate it.
Well, thank you. We appreciate that.
Thank you very much.
It's great. One thing, though, Jamie, if I could just say, you got Dean as a roving correspondent. How about an Asian roving correspondent, someone in Asia, to maybe fill in the gaps on the Asian scene in cinema? Have you guys thought about that?
I would be more than happy to send Dean to Asia.
I've tried. I've told him about a lot of Asian films.
Can I go? If I get my passport renewed, I'll go, and I won't come back, though. That's the problem. I'm just not going to come back.
So you're a big fan. Are you a big fan of Asian cinema, and that's something that you miss from our show?
That's almost what I watch now. I don't watch much anything else. I watch a lot of Asian films, a lot of Korean films, like some of the films I've been seeing. Harmony, which I thought was an excellent film.
I want to see that. I heard it's really good.
Oh my God, the woman that was in Lost, I can't think of the Korean actress's name, but she is so good in that film. And Going by the Book, which was made a number of years ago, which is as a kind of a switch around on the heist film, which was really well done. And they surprised me.
The Chaser. Did you ever see The Chaser?
Yes, I saw that.
That was
very
an awesome
good.
film? I mean,
my God,
just incredible. We saw that a couple of years ago. That was incredible. And Mother, the other Korean film I remember watching.
I haven't seen that. I want to see that, though, very much.
It's really well done.
And you also talk about poetry, too. That's another
poetry.
one.
I want to see that. Everyone's been raving about poetry. I want to see that.
You have to see poetry. It's very moving.
Okay.
It's a very moving film. But you've got so many great directors coming out of Asia. Can I suggest that you guys try to get some Asian directors to come on? You've got, like, the man that did Harmony, I think he's like 28 years old, and he's only done a few films, and he's such a good director, you know. So
I'd love to have Takashi Miike on the show, to be honest with you, and beat Takashi. I'd love to have those two Japanese directors on.
Oh my God, Takashi Kitano.
Yeah, I would just adore. I mean, now he would be. Now this is the thing, though. I know that Miike can speak English. I don't know. Can Kitano speak English or?
I'm not sure about that. I
don't want to ask him because I'm afraid I get the shit kicked out of me. So I mean, he's tough.
Guys,
he's a tough guy. He's a tough guy.
That's okay. You need that kind of stuff. I mean,
we do. I would. I agree with you 100%. And there is one of the greatest directors in the world is on this list, Wong Kar-wai for In the Mood for Love.
Yeah.
And that's someone we need to have on the
show. I love his films. I've tried to get him in the past. But Dean, what are you moving furniture now, or what's going on?
Yes, I am.
Wait, Dean, are you moving furniture during our show? God damn you!
Yes,
I am. I'm trying to get some housework done.
I sincerely see that as one of the defects of the show, is that, and it's entirely my fault, and probably my absence of knowledge about foreign films.
Come on, Jamie. That's not a defect, man. Come on. Are you kidding me?
Really, Jamie? You really want to go there? No.
No, but I definitely want to improve the show in terms of our coverage of classic film and foreign language film. But anyway, that's all I have to say about that.
I think it would round it out, and you'd get maybe more. I mean, look at the billions of people who live in Asia. You'd get that audience as well.
Yeah,
and,
you're right.
You're such a professional show. I mean, the last interview that you just, I don't know if it was the last one or not, but I'm not sure how these go. when you post them, but with the driver of Stanley Kubrick.
Yeah.
Oh my God, that blew me away.
Oh, thank you, man. Thank you. You know,
really did.
Here's the funniest. I didn't tell. I don't know if you guys have listened to it yet, but this is the funniest story that he told. He said he didn't know who he was working for. He didn't know it was Stanley Kubrick. The first assignment that he was sent on was because he was good at driving icy roads, and there were icy roads in the UK at that time. So the first assignment was to go to the airport, pick up something, bring it to the set, not knowing who he was working for. He goes to the airport. The thing he ends up picking up is the big white ceramic penis that was used as a murder weapon in Clockwork Orange.
Oh, wow.
That bobs up and down. Yeah.
He's like, what am I doing? Like, who am I working for here?
That's amazing.
That's great. He said the thing was huge. And if I would have gotten pulled over or in an accident or something, that would have been terrible.
Can you imagine that?
Amazing.
That would have been great.
How crazy is that?
Yeah. Buddy, thank you so much for your support, and I'm so glad that you like the show, and we'll do everything that we can to explore foreign films a bit more for you in the future.
Okay, can I say just one thing to the Asian audience, and especially to Korea? Annyeonghaseyo, hello to all the Korean fans of MGU. And if you're Asian, come on, start calling in and talking with these guys. These guys are great.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me on, guys.
We really appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, buddy. Have a good night.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Oh, two great callers. Wow.
Wow. You have not been punked yet at all. This is awesome.
It's kind of a record.
How rare is that? I was for sure that those would be prank callers because every time we pick up a line, I always have that fear they're gonna start cursing or something. You know. Okay. Thank you both so much for calling in. And honestly, all the listeners out there, and I know there are tons of listeners. I mean, actually, our listener numbers have boosted up just in the past couple of months alone. I mean, we've got a listener base of just under 3 million, but man, they've really gone up just recently.
That's incredible. I mean, that's incredible.
Amazing.
But thank you guys for calling in. Any listeners out there that want to call in anytime, we're live usually Sundays at 6 p.m. Eastern, Wednesdays at 10 p.m. Eastern. So feel free to join the conversation. We'd love to have you in the fold here. Okay. I guess let's just pull out some of the titles on this list. The Battle of Algiers, Pontecorvo's film, comes in at number 48. I've seen this several times. I just watched it again just like 2 months ago when Criterion came out with its Blu-ray. It is an astounding movie.
It is. I mean, you know, what's wonderful about that movie is that it kind of pioneers that kind of, it's kind of one of the pioneers of that,
documentary style.
You know, that documentary/narrative style. And in fact, Pontecorvo, you know, it's funny, you know, Pontecorvo was nominated for Best Director for that movie from the Oscars. So it actually did hit a wide swath of people when it came out. You know, he was nominated. The movie was nominated the previous year for best foreign film, and then the following year it was nominated for Best Director and Best Screenplay as well. And that was the only two nominations it got. But yeah, that movie is astounding. You know, what are you going to say?
We released it like back in 2003 or no 2004 because of the Iraq War and everything, and people wanted to see it. It's amazing that the film has never gone out of style. I don't know what that says about us as a civilization.
Well, it's still incredibly visceral. I mean, it does still play like a punch in the gut, and coupled with that completely haunting score by Morricone. And you just scenes where when there's an explosion in a crowd, and how did they do that? I mean, that just looks so deadly, the shooting of that movie. I mean, it really does feel like the greatest guerrilla film ever made.
That's true. No, I mean, there's a lot of it's an amazing film.
Yeah, Jerry,
everyone
could you do?
Loves it. That we love everyone that we admire on this show. Talk about loves that movie. I mean, it's amazing. Soderbergh loves that movie.
Yeah, that's an extra on the Criterion with Soderbergh and Oliver Stone and a couple of other people talking.
Another one who loves that movie. I mean,
by the way, Oliver Stone friended us on Twitter today.
Yeah,
that's nice.
And it is the actual Oliver Stone because he updates it himself. I'm sure he has assistants like come in sometimes to do maintenance on it. But so why can't we get an interview with him? Come on, Oliver, if you're listening.
Oliver,
well, you need to Twitter him back and say, hey, can't we get an interview with you?
I've tweeted him.
Oliver, I love Savages. Everyone hates me because I love Savages, but come on.
That's right. That's reason enough.
I saw Savages, and I thought it was incredibly entertaining. I thought it was very good.
3 people like Savages.
That's right. We're the 3, Oliver. Call us. Jerry, could you do me a favor?
Yeah.
Is your cell phone fully charged?
No. Am I the problem?
You're clicking.
It's popping.
It's popping. Okay, I'll call back in. Okay.
If you're able to. If not, then just stay on this line.
Okay, no, I can call. Let me do that, okay?
I'm sorry, buddy.
No, that's all right. That's okay.
All right, man.
You know what else is interesting? You know, you bring up Battle of Algiers, great movie, but here's one of the few movies of the top 50 that I haven't seen. I have to admit that I haven't seen a lot of Alif Kiarostami's movies from Iran, and I guess his most recent film was his first film outside of Iran, which was that movie with Juliette Binoche that just came out. Oh God, I can't even remember the name of the movie. But you know, his movie Close Up appears at number 42. It's funny. I you know, one of the few movies that I've seen by him is called A Taste of Cherry, and I was surprised that movie didn't appear in the top 50 if there was going to be any one of his movies to appear. But Close Up is the one that appeared. And you know, there's a lot of surprising omissions and inclusions in this top 50 list. I mean, you know, taking a look at it now, there's a surplus of Jean-Luc Godard movies, but they're not the Jean-Luc Godard movies that you might expect, like Masculine Feminine,
yes,
or Weekend, or even there are movies like Histoire du Cinema, which I mean, how many people have seen that? You know, I mean, I haven't.
Well,
even seen that.
The one that got high ranked is Contempt. I mean, Contempt got high ranked in the top number 21. And again, Contempt has enjoyed a reissue in recent years. It's out there. It's been more widely seen than ever before. And I recall that movie being kind of blasted upon its release. I mean,
was. People
considered it a lesser Godard.
Yeah, they did. But I think you're right in pointing out that this with Contempt and with Battle of Algiers, actually, both of these movies enjoyed a re-release in the late 90s on the big screen. And they're now, I think they're both Criterion Collection inclusion. Yeah. And I think
Criterion lost the rights to Contempt, so it was picked up by somebody else. But it was just reissued again last year in another Blu-ray from another company. But it's also one of his most straightforward. You know, but the story that I remember about Contempt is Brigitte Bardot is in it, and it opens with a post-coital scene, I guess, where she's completely naked on the bed. And Godard intentionally screwed with the color and the contrast in that scene, and it's so obviously done. It's like an act of espionage to say, you know, I know you want to see this, but I'm gonna screw with this image of her naked on the bed. Yeah.
Right.
Damn you, Godard.
Jack Palance in that.
Fritz Lang in that.
Yeah. Yeah, and also is it Sam Fuller that's in that as well, or is Sam Fuller in another? Maybe Sam Fuller's in another. Well, Fritz Lang is definitely in that one, and Sam Fuller is in another. Sam Fuller's in Pierre LeFou, which also didn't that make the list too? Yeah, thank you. Didn't Pierre LeFou make the list as well? I'm looking through it right now.
I don't know.
Man, I'll tell you another thing that surprised me.
No, it didn't.
It didn't make the list.
No, it did. Number 42, Godard, Pierre LeFou, 65, 1965. Yes.
That's the one. That's the one that Sam Fuller is in. But also surprising on this list is the immense love for Tarkovsky.
Yes.
I mean, Tarkovsky appears at the list for the first time at number 19 with a movie I haven't even seen called Mirror from 1974.
Also, it's in the top 10 for the directors, Mirror. So this is like...
Right.
Yeah.
And that's extremely surprising because, I've always thought of, when I think of Tarkovsky, I always think of Andrei Rublev, which also made the top 50, and Solaris. And I'm not even sure Solaris is on here.
I see
Stalker.
It's not.
Yeah, it's not on here, but Stalker is from 1979. That got 39 votes at number 29. And so he's got 3 movies on this list, which is pretty incredible.
I think Tarkovsky, I think A Cure for Insomnia. That's what I think.
They are incredibly slow. No question about it.
The movie you're trying to come up with, Julie Binoche's Certified Copy.
Yes, Certified Copy, right.
Which Criterion just came out with that as well.
And he's got a new movie coming out that would take place, I think, in Tokyo or something. That's coming out, later on this year, probably next year.
Yeah, Jerry, buddy.
Yeah, what's up? Okay, so who has a new movie that takes place in Tokyo this year?
Not Tarkovsky. Albus Kiarostami from.
That's right. Okay.
And again, I can't remember that movie's name yet either because I haven't seen it. But that's something else. I mean, Kiarostami is one of the few people on this list that's a director that's still working. In the top 50. There's probably only about five filmmakers on this top 50 list that are still working.
If you look at the individual directors lists, and again, those will be up for general public consumption in the coming week. But if you look at those lists, you'll see a lot of Scorsese represented on those lists. I think Coppola had Raging Bull and King of Comedy on his top 10 list. But the only Scorsese represented on the all-time greatest top 50 overall was Taxi Driver.
Right. Yeah.
And as I told Tony last night, I personally agree with that.
Well, I think Taxi Driver has a lot. I mean, like what we were saying about, if you take into account what movies are saying. I mean, personally, I like Goodfellas a lot. I think Goodfellas is my favorite Scorsese movie, hands down. But I have to realize that Goodfellas is really essentially A, great storytelling, and B, incredibly entertaining. But C, I don't know what it has to say about humanity. However, with Taxi Driver actually does have a lot to say about humanity, and that's why that movie should be his movie that's on this list.
Mm-hmm. I think so too, and plus it's a movie that would be really hard to make today. I can imagine him being able to make Goodfellas. Oh, you're going to go back to the gangster thing? Let's do it. But Taxi Driver is a brave movie in the 70s, and it would be an even braver movie now, I think.
No, it would be. It would totally be to make that in today. Yeah. So don't you think Goodfellas is something besides just being all right? It's him back in his element with the gangsters. Don't you think that says something about humanity? I'm not sure what, but don't you think it says something?
I don't really know what it has to say about humanity outside.
It's a very American movie.
Yeah, it is.
In a sense, it's a dark side of how to, if in one sense, the dark side of the American dream, not how to accomplish the American dream, but by not, I guess how to, I said, using Henry Hill's own logic, not being one of the idiots who goes on the subway and goes for his 9-to-5 job, but trying to cheat the system, if you were.
It's a great American movie, but I'm not sure it's a great world movie. I'm not sure
that's a good point. That is a very good point, and that's
that's the thing.
Its big story that it expresses is one of the oldest in the book. I mean, it's the guy that dreams of the easy life, and he enters the life of crime, and he's on the top of the mountain. And then it's just a descent into hell, which has been done to death. What makes Goodfellas really pop are the details, is the real feeling of slice of life that you get from that movie. You feel like you are in their world. That's the value of that
you really
movie.
Feel like I mean, it's really kind of like the precursor to something like Mad Men, for instance, where when you watch Mad Men, you feel like you're totally transported back into that time period. And I think Goodfellas does that. It really does transport you back into that time period. But that said, it doesn't say anything about humanity, as a whole. I mean, Taxi Driver says a lot about loneliness. That's what that movie is about.
That's the epitome. I mean, definitely.
And Goodfellas says a lot about lousiness.
It does. But it's uniquely American, though. That movie is uniquely American. Not saying that
in a way, I guess it is. But gangster movies have come from all kinds of different countries, and they're the same story. They're the same arc, really.
Yeah. I think you put your finger on it.
Yeah, I mean, look at something like Gomorrah from a couple of years ago.
Exactly. Or even Prophet.
Yeah, Prophet is the same, in the same thing, but interesting, okay.
Well, I rewatched Goodfellas, actually, just last week, and I rewatched it with the commentary with Henry Hill and the FBI guy that took him down, and it was beautiful. Oh, my gosh, that was the most entertaining commentary I've ever heard. It was such an interesting dynamic between the two of them, because he's bragging about all the crimes he went on. Oh, God, those were great times. And the FBI guy's like, we're on to you the whole time, Henry. Just great. What a great
that must be
idea.
Yeah.